Rules Committee come to order, and good afternoon, and welcome to the Rules Committee for Tuesday, December 6th. Today, the committee will consider H.R. 5143, the Transparent Insurance Standards Act of 2016. This legislation enhances Congress's oversight of the international deliberations related to insurance standards and establishes a series of requirements to be met before the Federal Insurance Office or the Federal Reserve may agree to, accept, establish, or enter into, or consent to the adoption of a final international insurance standard. It is imperative that the United States of America, through the states, the executive branch, and the Congress, to work cooperatively to schedule to the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, the Financial Stability Board, and foreign governments that we will only lend our name to standards and agreements that benefit the U.S. consumers and allow us to remain a robust insurance marketplace. I commend the extremely thoughtful gentleman from the 3rd District of Missouri, the gentleman, Mr. Luke DeMeyer. I've admired him for a number of years and appreciate his work on the Financial Services Committee. His crafting this important legislation, of which I am a proud co-sponsor, and I also want to welcome Mr. Cleaver, the gentleman from Missouri, and Congressman Denny Hecht, if he is around and due to be here. Denny, I'm going to put you up at the table at the same time. We're up against the wall on a vote. Thank you very much. I want to welcome all 3 of you to the committee. Obviously, anything you have in writing will be into the record. We have an awesome stenographer with us today who wants to make sure she gets everything right. She translates often in Texan. She can do well from the Show Me State from Missouri. Thank you, gentlemen. Pending me giving you the word, we're going to go to the gentleman, the ranking member of the committee, the gentleman from Massachusetts, for his opening statement. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like to ask unanimous consent to have inserted in the record the statement of Ranking Member Maxine Waters in opposition to this bill.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Without objection, that'll be entered the record.
Because I'm always such a team player, and I know we're up against a vote, I will yield back my time.
The gentleman is right in line with that teamwork today. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Insurance serves as the backbone of financial independence for millions of Americans. It can offer support when it's needed most, and consumers rest assured that they're protected in the event of a loss. Our nation has a history of thoughtful insurance regulation, a robust industry, and strong consumer confidence. Our job is to ensure that foreign regulators don't do anything to jeopardize that. H.R. 5143, the Transparent Insurance Standards Act, would offer that assurance. It would create a more formalized role for congressional monitoring of agreements impacting U.S. policyholders and insurance markets. H.R. 5143 would not only help protect the best interests of U.S. insurance customers, but is also a step in restoring the powers vested in Congress in Article 1 of the Constitution. The Transparent Insurance Standards Act would establish a series of reasonable requirements to be met before Treasury's Federal Insurance Office, the Federal Reserve, or any other party to international regulatory conversations could consent to the adoption of a final insurance standard. With regard to conversations at the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, or the IAIS, H.R. 5143 would require Team USA, which is made up of the Fed, FIO, and the state insurance commissioners, to publish any proposed final standard for congressional review and public comment. Additionally, H.R. 5143 would institute a 90-day layover and submission period, allowing Congress the ability to block any international agreement. It would also ensure state insurance commissioners a broader role in negotiations, thereby protecting the state-based regulatory system that has served policyholders well for more than 100 years. The legislation would also help to ensure that the United States is in a position to export domestic standards rather than import European-centric ones, and would strengthen Team USA and its ability to advocate for policies that best suit our markets and consumers. U.S. insurers have diverse interests, issues, and concerns. When the Financial Services Committee embarked on this journey, the intent was to craft a bill that respected the process but provided this body and the public with more opportunity. As such, H.R. 5143 has been drafted with the input of a wide variety of support. This bill is not intended to bring the international process to a grinding halt, nor do I mean to insinuate that all international insurance conversations threaten the United States. Team USA has experienced victories and has kept Congress informed of its negotiations. Rather, it's my hope that this legislation will serve as leverage for U.S. negotiators. The truth of the matter, Mr. Chairman, is that conversations surrounding international insurance standards are complex. Our constituents don't read about them in the local paper or discuss them at the dinner table. If they do, they're really nerdy. But these conversations and negotiations at the IAIS have real implications on U.S. companies for all shapes and sizes, and more importantly, every American policyholder. Given that, consideration of 85143 shouldn't be a partisan affair. I know many of my friends across the aisle and their constituents would like to see a more transparent process. This is what this bill does. The legislation the House will consider this week won't derail the nation's effort to secure good deals internationally, but it will make sure that the many parties impacted have a stronger voice, be it through their representatives in Congress or directly to the negotiators. It's imperative that the United States, that is, the states, the executive branch, and Congress work cooperatively to signal to the IAIS, the Financial Stability Board, and foreign governments that we will only lend our name to standards and agreements that benefit U.S. consumers and allow us to maintain a robust insurance marketplace. H.R. 5143 would help meet this objective. It would provide for greater transparency, allow for a stronger TMUSA, and signal that the U.S. will lead, but will not be led. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the opportunity to testify today and request that the Rules Committee grant a rule that allows for the expeditious consideration of H.R. 5143. And with that, I yield back.
Make sure that we follow through exactly as you suggested. Mr. Hecht, I'm going to have you hold on for a minute. It's my understanding that you wish to offer an amendment to the bill. Is that correct? Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Cleaver, welcome to the Rules Committee. We're delighted that you're here. If you'll please remember that green light needs to be on that microphone, and then we'll all be able to hear you. The gentleman from Kansas City, Missouri is recognized.
Actually, I'm from Missouri. I think Mr. Luke DeMeyer's from Missouri. But,
Well, that's fine. I used to live in St. Louis, Missouri.
yes.
And so it's the other end of the state. So over there, it's Missouri and you're Missouri. Well, my uncle was the mayor of Peculiar, Missouri.
That's right. That's near me.
Yeah, that's right. And Peculiar, Missouri is a great place.
Yes.
Gentleman's
I
recognized.
agree, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. This act, the Transparent Insurance Standard Act, actually undermines one of the central goals of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act as it relates to the insurance industry, to ensure our regulators have the necessary tools to prevent the possibility of a future collapse of large, globally active insurance companies like AIG. The 2008 crisis demonstrated that state regulators, which have primary jurisdiction over insurance companies, are not equipped to monitor the systemic risk that some of the largest insurance companies pose to our economy. And that was why Dodd-Frank provided for enhanced federal oversight over the largest firms in the insurance industry by the Federal Reserve, which has taken important steps already to study and tailor policies appropriate for these businesses. I am a strong proponent of the state regulatory system. John Huff is from Missouri, who is the president of the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. And so I don't think this in any way trespasses on the system that we've had in place for a number of decades. And I do not take federal preemption lightly. But I also know that our fragmented state-by-state approach for insurance regulation has proven to be insufficient when it comes to systemic risk, and H.R. 5143 ignores this important lesson for recent history and represents a misguided attempt to hamper our progress in managing these global risks. We should learn from our past mistakes, or we will repeat them again, which is exactly what this bill proposes to stop. The bill is not designed, as far as I can read, to solve any known problem. It rather, in a long sentence, it simply says that it caters to an unfounded fear that European-centric policies agree to and backroom deals would be forced upon small domestic insurance companies and unwilling states. So first, let me be clear. The standards being negotiated internationally are only for the largest insurers that operate all over the world, only the largest. Small domestic insurance companies have nothing at all to fear. Second, states can never, ever be compelled to adopt international standards anyway. And importantly, these standards do not apply to insurers regulated at the state level unless and until, and this is extremely important, each state agrees to it and goes through the required rulemaking process. And even if my party had a conflicting position to this, I would never support any legislation that would remove the states from being the sole decision-making authority for insurance companies that are not newly supervised by the Fed. And then third and lastly, stakeholders have ample opportunity to weigh in on these international agreements. For example, federal negotiators have held session after session after session with these stakeholders to provide input. And the International Association of Insurance Supervisors has greatly improved public access and consultation. Yet H.R. 5143 would require several additional notices and comment periods, and it creates more unnecessary red tape. So these provisions are unnecessary because there are already protections in place to ensure that negotiations for international insurance standards are both transparent and non-binding. In trying to keep up with the spirit of getting things quickly done, I will forego my last 10 pages.
I appreciate that. More than I can say. We'll now go to the gentleman from Washington, Mr. Heck, so we can hear what somebody outside the states of Missouri and Missouri actually think about this legislation. Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a slightly uncomfortable position to be sitting between two people from the Show Me State, but that's exactly what I'm going to attempt to do. I come today asking the Rules Committee to approve a rule allowing for an amendment that is an alternative approach than that taken in the underlying bill. Let me state at the outset that I share the objective of my friend from Missouri on this side, very much so, in terms of putting some guardrails on how these international negotiations might occur. And as well, I share my objective from my friend from Missouri on this side in attempting to ensure that the state-based regulatory system is upheld. I just want to take a different approach, which I frankly think is more workable. And again, with all due respect to my friend from Missouri, which is essentially a disclosure and transparency approach. My concern about it is that it would, if not handicap, might even disable the negotiating process. It's the nature of negotiations. You don't want to put everything out there in public because you're rendered less able to get to yes and to get to satisfactory outcome. Mine instead, my alternative approach, is principle-based and basically says the insurance commissioners, as represented, have to be at the table, and as my other friend from Missouri indicates, we have to protect the state-based system. And I want to remind for those of you who weren't here, maybe some of you were, no names mentioned, Mr. Chair, in 1945, when the basic federal policy framework was adopted in the form of the McCarran-Ferguson Act, it basically made this sacred covenant. We will allow insurance to be regulated at the state level in exchange for which, if it is, an exemption from antitrust. That's the covenant. And anything that seeks to damage, diminish, dilute that, to me, is a stepping back from McCarran-Ferguson. And you know what? I'd be okay to, let's have that open debate. Let's have a full-throated debate. Is McCarran-Ferguson still the approach we want to take? Come on, come all. But I don't want to backdoor it. And I feel like that is exactly what might happen if we allow this to proceed without something like my proposed alternative. And I do want to mention that my alternative has also enjoyed significant external stakeholder support. Everybody from the National Association of Insurance Commissioners to the mutual insurance companies to the Property Casualty Insurance Association of America to the independent insurance agents. I think it is important that for large multinational insurance companies that there be some form of negotiations to ensure that this is done correctly. But I also believe that we can do that without damaging the underlying federal policy framework, which is what my alternative does, and would appreciate very much the opportunity to have that debate on the floor in the form of offering that amendment. And I thank you, Mr. Chair, and I didn't mean it at all about you being here in 1945.
Thank you. Chair has no questions. Gentleman from Georgia? No questions. Gentleman from Massachusetts? Gentleman from Texas? Gentleman from Alabama? I think the real chairman is coming back, so I think I'll surrender the chair to him and let him wrap this up. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, my friend.
Chairman Cole, thank you very much. There was a statement that you'd made that this really goes against what evidently the administration does not see as the best answer for it, and I've not looked at the SAP. What did that contain, sir?
Well, the administration says that it believes that, two principal things. One, that, and I'm, in a partisan way, that won't matter, and that is that this does serious damage to Dodd-Frank in the sense that we, with great intentionality during that entire debate, I was probably the only one here of those present, where we first of all want to do nothing to trespass against the state insurance regulatory system. We didn't want to do that. Then number two, there's no reason for us to get involved in this because we've already protected the small insurance companies. This would only impact the large insurance companies around the world. And then even if let's say the European, we do come back with a European-centric system, the states would still have to approve it before anything would happen, so, which they wouldn't do. So, I mean, I'm not sure that, I think if nothing happened, the world would still, I mean, the sun would still rise in the east tomorrow. I mean, nothing, I don't think the legislation is necessary at this point. There is no problem, as I said in my statement, that this legislation addresses.
Is he suggesting that now that Mr. Trump has a different view of the world, and probably Republicans would also, that would be in the administration, that now we're okay and that this does not apply because we don't have to protect ourselves against an active marketplace from a Democrat administration?
Well,
Is that the essence of his argument?
Mr. Chairman, I can't speak for my colleague. I'm not sure, but I disagree with his premise. The premise that he says is we don't have a problem. And so these problems can be worked out at the IAS. And Dodd-Frank solved all our problems by putting somebody in charge. And this is quite the contrary, because right now, as we sit here today, the Germans and the Belgians are sitting there telling our people, our insurance companies, they're going to have to jump through a bunch of hoops. And if our negotiators, what we're doing with this legislation is actually empowering the people who these gentlemen want to take the power away from. I'm wanting to empower these people to be able to represent our country and our industries and our consumers. And in doing that, put Congress in charge of backstopping them. I've had one-on-one discussions with the executive director of the IAIS and told him, keep your hands off our insurance companies. We realize our insurance companies are regulated differently than what you guys do in the rest of the world. Therefore, it's trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So please do not do anything that impacts our companies in a negative way. And this legislation is wanted, needed by our representatives over there, the FIO director and the Federal Reserve representative, to be able to negotiate and have the leverage to say no or yes to what goes on and protect our industry and our consumers and this country's most important insurance industry activities. If you don't do this, we already are being threatened by the Germans and the Belgians, our companies are. I've got one 60 miles north of where I live that does reinsurance in Germany right now that needs this help. That's an example.
Well, I think help is on the way, and I think it's we're part of the answer. Does any other member seek time? Any other member seek time? Mr. Chairman, if I could ask, did Mr. Heck get an opportunity to present his amendment? He did indeed. Oh, good, thank you. I want to thank all three of you for being here. What we do is ask questions about legislation. We try and vet it as best as possible, and we appreciate and count on each of you not only bring your best game here, but also correcting the young chairman when he says the wrong name of your state correctly, and I once again, I'll apologize to my Uncle Greg this afternoon for calling it Missouri as opposed to Missouri, and I thank all three of you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, sir. Chairman, is there any other member that
You
seeks?
say Missouri.
I do say Missouri.
He says Missouri.
Well,
Yeah,
so does he.
and he
I said
says
Missouri.
Missouri.
No, he says Missouri. I
You
say
do?
Missouri. But
Yeah,
I,
'cause
but that's because I lived in the other end of the state. And shows what St. Louis knows. Thank you very
Billy
much.
Long says Missouri.
It depends where you're from. Okay, is there any other member that would seek to give testimony under HR 5143, Transparent Insurance Standards Act of 2016? Seeing none, this now closes the hearing portion. Chairman will be in receipt of a motion from the gentlewoman from Grandfather Community, North Carolina, the Vice Chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee grant H.R. 5143, the Transparent Insurance Standards Act of 2016, a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour debate equally divided, controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 114-68 shall be considered as adopted, and the bill as amended shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill as amended. The rule makes in order only the further amendment printed in the Rules Committee report, if offered by the member designated in the report, which shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment printed in the report. The rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions. Section 2 of the rule provides that on any legislative day after December 8, 2016, the journal of the proceedings of the previous day shall be considered as approved, and the chair may at any time declare the House adjourned to meet at a date and time to be announced by the chair in declaring the adjournment. Section 3 of the rule provides that the Speaker may appoint members to perform the duties of chair for the duration of the period addressed by Section 2. Section 4 of the rule provides that each day during the period addressed by Section 2 of the resolution shall not constitute calendar days for the purposes of Section 7 of the War Powers Resolution. Section 5 of the rule provides that each day during the period addressed by Section 2 of the resolution shall not constitute a legislative day for purposes of Clause 7 of Rule 13. Finally, Section 6 of the rule provides that it shall be in order at any time on the legislative day of December 8th, 2016, for the Speaker to entertain motions that the House suspend the rules as though under Clause 1 of Rule 15, and that the Speaker or his designee shall consult with the minority leader or her designee on the designation of any matter for consideration pursuant to this section.
Thank you very much. You've now heard the motion from the gentlewoman from North Carolina. Is there amendment or discussion to that? Seeing none, the vote will now be on the motion from the gentlewoman. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Roll call.
The gentleman asks for a roll call vote.
Ms. Fox?
Aye.
Ms. Fox, aye. Mr. Cole? Mr. Cole, aye. Mr. Woodall? Mr. Woodall, aye. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, aye. Mr. Stivers? Mr. Collins? Mr. Byrne? Mr. Byrne, aye. Mr. Newhouse? Ms. Slaughter? Mr. McGovern?
No.
Mr. Govern? No. Mr. Hastings? Mr. Hastings, no. Mr. Polis? Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Clerk report the
Aye.
total.
6 yeas, 2 nays.
Motion is agreed to, is agreed to, and accordingly, the gentleman from Alabama, the gentleman, Mr. Byrne, will be handling this for Republicans.
And the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings. will be
And the
handling
gentleman,
Democrats.
Judge Hastings, will be handling this for our colleagues who are Democrats. Thank you very much. I need to, before I ask if anybody has any questions, let you know that we have already announced a meeting for 3 o'clock tomorrow. Now, they've changed the name of the bill. It's for the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation Act, formerly known as WRDA, W-R-D-A. So it's now the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation Act.
When?
Win. All right, then WIN Act. 3 o'clock tomorrow. So I also know that you're going to ask me, oh, and what about the omnibus, the CR?
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Boy. I get reminded of that, just dates, so.
You must be a mind reader.
Yeah, so I don't know when that's going to happen, but as soon as we do go to file it, as you know, we do it here at the Rules Committee first, I will make sure that the gentlewoman, Mrs. Slaughter, is aware that we have done so that that proverbial clock can begin. Any comments or questions?
May I-
Yes, ma'am.
Not on this issue.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I plan to be at the meeting tomorrow, but it will be my last meeting on the
Yes,
Rules
that's-
Committee.
Is that a threat or a promise?
No. And I just, because time constraints may be greater tomorrow than I think they are right now, I just want to say what a joy it's been to serve on the Rules Committee. As Pete knows, I came to this committee kicking and screaming and had to have my arm twisted to come here. But I will tell you, it's been a great experience to learn so much and to work with such a great group of people. Pete is the kindest, most thoughtful person I know, and has treated me extremely well. But it's been good to work on the committee, and people were right when they told me this. You will learn a lot. It'll be the best committee in the House to work on, and it's been great. So I'll miss the committee, believe it or not, and I want to wish you all well. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
In fact, Virginia, yes. In fact, Virginia, when you occupied that fourth seat over
Yes.
there were many days that you understood exactly why you were there, and you thought she did.
I really liked you when you had that fourth seat.
No, that's really not my point. My point is, she did not wander in the darkness. She knew what she stood for. And Virginia has always been a person who is very forthright, but willing to use her ability to think through things and work through them, not to sit there and get frustrated or angry, or she just did it. And
Plus.
I've watched Virginia for a long, long time, and you know that. And the first about 6 years I was around her, I wrote her a note every day and told her I loved her. And she quit liking those as much because the work got different. But the facts of the case are real simple. She has earned her way to be the chairman of a committee. And that is of a very difficult, important committee that is not only relevant in everybody's daily life, but it handles a lot of the business of this Congress. And Virginia, you were uncontested, which is a rarity in our conference also. There's always somebody that thinks they can do something better than somebody else, and that's good. But in this case, nobody thought they could do it better than you. Well, no, that's the facts. Those are the facts, and you don't have to like the facts, but that's undisputed. And I think that your colleagues on the Republican and Democrat side wish you the very best, and I do hope you're here tomorrow. I've got some things I want to say about you tomorrow, and some of them may be nice. But the facts of the case are you are an admired woman of enormous content, and that you've put your time in here. You understand what we're doing up here and why, and I know you're going to be missed.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I just may,
Gentleman's recognized.
at the risk of costing her chairmanship or her reelection, I think we all are going to miss her as well. There's not very much we agree on politically, although there have been occasions when we have come together, especially when it has come to protecting American jobs, and I will always be grateful to the gentlelady for her advocacy. I also, I'm going to miss her because when she's sitting in the chair's seat, she runs everything in a very timely fashion. She does not let anybody go on for too long. And I think that that's a trait we're going to miss. But But I do admire her because she's a woman of great commitment and principle, and she stands for what she believes in, and I, I always look forward to battling it out with her on the floor or in committee, but I admire her very much, and I think I speak for all of us on this side, and we're going to miss you, and, but you'll come up here as a chair, and you'll be testifying, and you'll get to...
I'm afraid I will.
Yeah, so, but anyway, but thank you very much for your friendship and for your service.
Thank you, Jim. That's very
Since
nice.
we've gotten you, Mr. McGovern, in a nice place, I'd
Don't
like
push
to
it.
ask, I'd like to ask one thing of you,
Yes,
and just tell me yes now.
yes.
The first time she's up here and there's a sap, I'd like for you to ask that the sap be entered into the record.
And I will do so with gusto and pride, and I will,
And we will call it in memory of Virginia Fox. We're going to submit the administration's viewpoint
but I
of
assume with
the
the
world.
next president, all the saps will be whatever you guys want.
Well, that's what I mean, but you'll be the one that presents it just in honor of Virginia.
As
Let me know.
Elsie said, we won't get him, he'll just tweet him up here.
There you go. But really, the lives of people, this is our career up here. I mean, this is our career, and Judge Hastings knows that. He's been up here. Jim McGovern wanted to be here.
Right.
And Louise. So listen, we're going to say goodbye to tomorrow, but today we had fun.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Is there anything further from the committee? Hearing nothing, we've now completed our work for the day.
Thank you for those kind comments.
Judge. Thank you for that approval for the trip. Yes, sir.